Remember sitting in those dark theaters, completely mesmerized by the stars on screen? Their charm, their beauty, their grace. It all felt like magic. But behind the velvet curtain of old Hollywood was a world of secrets, scandals, and heartbreak that no camera ever caught. What if I told you the real drama wasn't in the scripts, but in the lives of the actors themselves? Today, we're lifting the curtain on the stars we thought we knew. Their stories are raw, messy, and more tragic than any movie they ever made. This is Hollywood's golden age with all its tarnish. Grab your coffee and settle in, because fame, as we're about to see, is a dangerous game. Glowing star Clark Gable, the king with a burdened heart. Clark Gable wasn't just Hollywood royalty, he was Hollywood. With his mustache, charm, and butter-smooth voice, he made every woman swoon and every man envious. But beneath the dashing image was a man who never felt quite enough. Raised in rural Ohio, Gable's father dismissed him as too soft for farm work. That early rejection haunted him through his life. Behind studio gates, his story only grew darker. During the filming of Call of the Wild, Gable had a secret relationship with co-star Loretta Young. What the public didn't know: that relationship resulted in a pregnancy the studio buried to avoid scandal. Loretta disappeared, gave birth in secret, then later adopted her own daughter to protect their careers. Gable was a notorious womanizer. MGM's fixers worked overtime hiding his affairs. But even the king could be broken. When his third wife, Carole Lombard, died in a plane crash in 1942, he fell apart. Alcohol became his companion. Rhett Butler might have seemed invincible, but the man who played him was quietly drowning in grief. Rainbow Judy Garland, the girl who never found the rainbow. Judy Garland, the darling who sang her way into our hearts in The Wizard of Oz, lived one of the most tragic lives in showbiz. Signed by MGM at just 16, Judy was treated like a product, not a person. She was given stimulants to keep her alert for 18-hour workdays and sedatives to help her sleep. Her diet? Chicken soup and cigarettes, 80 a day to keep her thin. Shamed, drugged, and exhausted, she spiraled into lifelong addiction. 5 marriages, all doomed. A desperate search for love and stability that always ended in heartbreak. She shone on stage. Pain gave her performances power. But offstage, she was withering. At just 47, she died of an overdose in a London hotel. Her death was the price of a system that chewed her up and spit her out. Broken heart Marlon Brando, the genius at war with himself. Marlon Brando didn't act, he erupted onto the screen. A streetcar named Desire changed Hollywood forever. But his rage, his passion, his brilliance all came from pain. Abused by his alcoholic father and neglected by his mother, young Brando learned early how cruel the world could be. Fame didn't heal him. He loved men and women alike, married multiple times, and remained emotionally unpredictable. "I'm not sure I'm a human being," he once admitted. His family life crumbled. His son was involved in a fatal shooting. His daughter took her own life. Brando was never the same. He rejected the Oscar for The Godfather, sending a Native American activist in his place to protest Hollywood's racism. The rebel became a recluse. His talent burned bright, but his soul was always on fire. Zipper-mouth face Rock Hudson, the heartthrob with a secret. Rock Hudson was the fantasy of every woman in America. But behind the perfect jawline and charming smile was a secret that could have ended his career. He was gay. Born Roy Scherer Jr., he grew up with an abusive stepfather and used movies as escape. Hollywood built a false identity for him. Arranged marriages, staged romances, all to keep the truth hidden. He lived in fear, craving love but forced to pretend. In 1985, he shocked the world by revealing he had AIDS. It was the first time many Americans saw the disease affect someone they idolized. Hudson's final act was his most courageous, owning the truth and putting a face to a crisis. Drop of Blood Ingrid Bergman, the Saint America tried to cancel. Ingrid Bergman was America's sweetheart. After Casablanca and the Bells of St. Mary's, she could do no wrong. Until 1950, while filming in Italy, Bergman and married director Roberto Rossellini fell in love. When she became pregnant with his child, the backlash was nuclear. Senators denounced her. Churches boycotted her films. The public, once adoring, turned vicious. Bergman didn't beg for forgiveness. She left America for years, living abroad in exile. When she returned in 1956 and won an Oscar for Anastasia, the crowd gave her a standing ovation, an apology too late. She had only ever been honest, but Hollywood wanted a saint, not a human being. Broken Heart, Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, a love that couldn't be. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn were Hollywood's most enduring secret couple. But behind their 26-year friendship was a tortured romance. Tracy was married and Catholic. Divorce was off the table. He battled alcoholism and guilt over his deaf son, believing God was punishing him. Hepburn stood by him, protecting him, loving him, but never truly having him. After his death, his wife, not Hepburn, was acknowledged publicly. Their love was powerful, but forever hidden in the shadows. Kitchen knife Lana Turner, the starlet caught in a murder mystery. Lana Turner was discovered sipping a soda at Schwab's pharmacy and became the iconic sweater girl. But her personal life was no fairy tale. 8 marriages, a violent lover named Johnny Stompanato, and a tragedy that rocked America. One night, as Stompanato threatened her, Turner's 14-year-old daughter Cheryl stabbed him in defense. The trial became a media frenzy. Turner wept on the witness stand. Cheryl was acquitted, but the scandal tainted her image forever. She spent a lifetime searching for love, only to be haunted by the chaos she couldn't escape. Coffin Jean Harlow, the original. Blonde bombshell's short flame. Jean Harlow created the bombshell persona, but the woman behind the glam was fragile. Married young to a man who abused her. Her second husband died mysteriously. Some whispered suicide. Her happiest romance with William Powell ended in heartbreak. At just 26, she collapsed on set. Her Christian Scientist mother refused medical help. Kidney failure took her life before anyone could intervene. She died young, beautiful, and broken. Hollywood's first great tragedy. Woman dancing Rita Hayworth, the goddess who felt invisible. Rita Hayworth's image was so powerful, GIs carried her photo into battle. But she was never the fantasy the world projected. Her own father abused her. Her first husband manipulated her into changing her identity. Marriages to Orson Welles and Prince Ali Khan ended in betrayal. "I was never Gilda," she said. "Men go to bed with Gilda and wake up with me." In her final years, undiagnosed Alzheimer's robbed her of her memories. The industry she helped build turned a blind eye. She was a goddess to the world, but never at peace with herself. Performing arts Charlie Chaplin, the clown with a dark side. Charlie Chaplin made the world laugh, but his private life raised serious eyebrows. He married teenage girls, was accused in a paternity scandal despite a negative test, and during the Red Scare was labeled a communist. The US banned him while he was abroad. He never became an American citizen. Chaplin's life was brilliant, tragic, and deeply controversial. Behind the mustache was a man as complex as the world he mocked. Teddy bear Mickey Rooney, the boy who never grew up. Mickey Rooney wasn't just a star, he was the movie industry at one point. From the 1930s through the early 1940s, he was the #1 box office draw in America for several years running. He brought to life the iconic Andy Hardy series, a wholesome, upbeat teen whose small-town charm won over Depression-era audiences. But behind that toothy grin and boy-next-door energy was a child who never had the chance to grow up. Born Joseph Yule Jr. to vaudeville performers, Mickey was thrust onto the stage before he could even form full sentences. His entire childhood was spent memorizing lines, hitting his marks, and making audiences laugh. There were no schoolyards, no best friends, no summer vacations, just cameras, makeup chairs, and studio contracts. He was working when most kids were still playing with marbles. By the time he hit adulthood, Mickey's fame had grown, but his life was unraveling. 8 marriages, some to Hollywood legends like Ava Gardner, ended in heartbreak, jealousy, or scandal. He gambled away fortunes, often falling into the clutches of shady figures and casinos that didn't believe in second chances. At his lowest, he was broke, sleeping in friends' guest rooms, and begging for work despite having earned millions over his lifetime. And the betrayals weren't just from strangers. Rooney's own mother, Nell, controlled his finances for years and reported. LY siphoned off his earnings. Later, in a heartbreaking court testimony, Rooney accused his stepson of elder abuse and financial exploitation, saying he was denied food, medicine, and the basic dignity of control over his own life. "I felt trapped, scared, used, and frustrated," he said at age 90, his voice cracking with pain. Yet through it all, he never stopped performing. He did voice work for Disney's Fox and the Hound, made cameos in sitcoms, and kept chasing applause as if it were the only thing keeping him alive. Rooney once said, "You can't just retire from show business. It retires you." But he never let it. He kept going, not because he had to, but because he didn't know how to stop. His life is a powerful reminder that child stars are often born in spotlights but live in shadows. Mickey Rooney had everything, then lost it all, and somehow still kept smiling for the camera. Oncoming automobile Montgomery Clift, the angel broken by fame. Montgomery Clift wasn't just a leading man, he was the leading man for a new generation. Alongside Brando and James Dean, Clift revolutionized acting in Hollywood with his raw vulnerability and emotional honesty. He didn't just perform, he exposed himself, flaws, pain, and all. But beneath that haunting beauty and groundbreaking talent was a man crushed by expectation, repression, and unimaginable trauma. Born into privilege but raised under a controlling mother who saw him more as a trophy than a son, Monty learned early how to wear masks. He was gay at a time when exposure meant exile. Hollywood studios forced him to attend stage dates with starlets. Rumors had to be buried. Lovers had to be secrets. Every smile at a premiere came with the fear of being found out. Clift poured all that pressure into his performances. In A Place in the Sun, From Here to Eternity, and The Heiress, he channeled his real-life longing, fear, and self-doubt into characters who were complex, wounded, and unforgettable. Then came the night that changed everything. In 1956, leaving a party at Elizabeth Taylor's home, Clift fell asleep at the wheel and crashed his car into a telephone pole. His jaw was shattered, nose broken, and front teeth knocked out. Taylor was the first to the scene, prying open the wreckage and saving his life, holding his bloodied face in her hands. But what the surgery couldn't repair was his soul. After the crash, Clift's appearance changed drastically, and so did his psyche. The beautiful man now stared at a reflection he barely recognized. Painkillers and alcohol became his escape, but they also became his prison. Directors had to shoot his scenes early in the day, before he was too intoxicated to stand. Despite his downward spiral, his post-accident performances, especially in Judgment at Nuremberg, carried an even deeper emotional gravity. His pain no longer hidden but woven into every word, every glance. Elizabeth Taylor never abandoned him. She shielded him from gossip, fought for him to get roles, and sometimes even revived him from unconscious stupors. But even she couldn't save him in the end. Montgomery Clift died in 1966 at just 45. His autopsy called it a heart attack, but friends said he died of brokenness. A candle that burned too brightly, too quickly, leaving behind performances that still tremble with truth. Dagger Errol Flynn, Hollywood's most charming predator. Errol Flynn was the ultimate swashbuckler, but off-screen, he chased teenage girls, installed peepholes in his house, and was tried but acquitted of statutory charges. He lived fast, partied harder, and wrote books to justify it all. By 50, years of alcohol abuse caught up with him. He died a legend, with a legacy both dazzling and disturbing. Motorcycle James Dean, the rebel who died too young. James Dean didn't need a long career to become a legend, just 3 films: East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and Giant. That's all it took to cement his place in cinematic history. But behind that brooding stare and rebellious energy was a young man aching for connection, battling inner turmoil, and running from ghosts that never stopped chasing him. Born in small-town Indiana, Dean lost his mother, his anchor, at just 9 years old. His father, unable to care for him, sent him away to live with relatives. That sense of abandonment never left him. It colored everything: his performances, his relationships, his relentless need to prove himself. He found refuge in acting, pouring his raw emotions into every role. He trained under Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio, honing a method style that felt real, almost too real, on screen. Unlike the polished stars before him, Dean brought something jagged, painful, and true. He was the outsider. He didn't just play misfits, he was one. But as his star rose, so did his obsession with speed. Dean didn't just drive, he raced. He bought motorcycles, sports cars, and famously nicknamed his silver Porsche 550 Spider Little Bastard. Friends warned him, Directors begged him to stop. Actor Alec Guinness said he had a premonition when Dean showed him the car, telling him he'd be dead within a week. 1 week later, on September 30th, 1955, Dean was speeding toward a race in Salinas, California when another car turned in front of him. He never had a chance. The impact killed him instantly. He was just 24. What followed was more than mourning, it was myth-making. Whispers of a curse on the car swirled. Questions about Dean's private life, his sexuality, and the pressure of fame intensified. But none of it could change the fact that James Dean had become a symbol of youth, of rebellion, of potential cut short. He never lived to see Rebel without a cause released. He didn't collect accolades. He didn't grow old. But maybe that's what made his story so powerful. James Dean lived as he acted, with intensity, loneliness, and fire. His life was tragically brief, but his legacy is eternal. Wineglass John Barrymore, the great actor who lost everything. John Barrymore was born into acting. Royalty, part of the legendary Barrymore dynasty that included his equally gifted siblings, Ethel and Lionel. With a regal bearing, unmatched stage presence, and a voice that could command silence from any audience, Barrymore wasn't just good, he was great. His portrayal of Hamlet on Broadway was considered definitive. On screen, he had a magnetic quality that made him one of the first true cinematic stars of the 1920s and 30s. Nicknamed the Great Profile, his looks were as iconic as his talent. He was the ideal leading man, handsome, intelligent, and dripping with charisma. But the spotlight, as it so often does in Hollywood, came with a shadow, and Barrymore's shadow was alcohol. What started as celebratory cocktails at elite Hollywood parties soon turned into full-blown dependency. Barrymore began showing up to sets intoxicated, slurring lines, or forgetting them entirely. Directors who once praised his genius now dreaded working with him. Once celebrated for Shakespeare, he was reduced to playing self-parodying versions of himself in screwball comedies, just to pay the bills. Friends tried to help, but Barrymore was already in freefall. He'd disappear for days, often found broke and drinking with strangers. His once grand home became a chaotic, revolving door of partiers, hangers-on, and broken dreams. A producer once remarked, "John Barrymore was the only man I knew who could outdrink his own legacy." And it wasn't just the drinking, it was the behavior. Barrymore grew erratic, outrageous, and sometimes vulgar. At social events, he'd perform crude pranks, insult powerful studio heads to their faces, or flirt shamelessly with married women. He was becoming a caricature of his former self, brilliant but broken. By the end, he needed cue cards to remember lines. He passed away in 1942 at age 60, saddled with debt, abandoned by the industry that once worshipped him. His funeral was nearly canceled due to lack of funds. Some claimed that friends borrowed his body to stage one last prank, propping it up in a chair to shock a colleague. Whether myth or truth, it symbolized a man whose life had become theater, even in death. John Barrymore's fall wasn't just a tragedy. It was a warning. The talent was never the issue. It was the toll of fame, the cost of excess, and the silence that followed the final curtain call. Prohibited Fatty Arbuckle, the scandal that shook Hollywood. Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle was beloved, until a wild party led to an accusation of murder. Though acquitted, the damage was done. His films were banned. His name was ruined. He died just as he was getting a second chance. His fall triggered the Hays Code, Hollywood's first morality rules. Detective George Reeves, the Superman mystery. George Reeves was America's Superman, but in 1959, he was found dead from a gunshot. Was it suicide or something more sinister? He'd been involved with a studio mogul's wife. There were no fingerprints on the gun. Friends said he felt watched. The case remains unsolved. Superman, it seemed, had no one to save him. Lightbulb Tab Hunter, the star who escaped the lie. Tab Hunter had the look, the smile, the charm, but he was trapped. A closeted gay man in the 1950s, he lived two lives, public and private. Fake dates, staged photos. Fear ruled his every move. Decades later, he came out, wrote his story, found peace. Circus tent Tony Curtis, the playboy who couldn't fill the void. Tony Curtis lived fast, starred in hits, slept with legends, and spiraled into addiction. His charm never faded, but his relationships crumbled. His kids barely knew him. His childhood poverty chased him forever. "I forgot who the ringmaster was," he said. "A life of fame without fulfillment. Fire Robert Mitchum, the original Hollywood bad boy." Mitchum didn't fake rebellion, he was rebellion. Pot busts, bar brawls, on-set blow-ups. He lived without apology. But he read poetry, thought deeply, balanced chaos and control like no one else. Crown Warren Beatty the charmer who took over Hollywood. Warren Beatty was the ultimate Hollywood player. Gorgeous, brilliant, and manipulative. He dated everyone, rewrote scripts, paused productions, until he met Annette Bening and shocked the world by settling down. He didn't fall. He ruled the storm. Old Hollywood wasn't just about glamour. It was about survival. These stars were more than icons, they were people. Flawed, fragile, brilliant. If you enjoyed diving behind the silver screen, hit that subscribe button. We've got more untold stories coming. And tell us, did any of these tales change the way you see your favorite stars? Behind every perfect picture is a broken dream. See you next time.